In a bustling city in Central Africa, there were 3 young men named Paul, John, and Joseph. They had been friends for as long as anyone could remember, growing up together in wealthy families and sharing childhood adventures. They attended the best schools, enjoyed lavish parties, and stood by each other through every milestone. As they grew older, their paths led them into the world of business, where they all found success. But among the 3, it was Paul who shined the brightest. Fortune seemed to favor him in ways it didn't for John and Joseph. He secured the best contracts, built a thriving company, and became the envy of many. Though their friendship endured, John and Joseph quietly nurtured a dangerous envy. Paul had it all: money, success, admiration. And despite his generosity, the resentment in their hearts began to become bitter. They too were successful, but in their eyes, Paul's achievements cast a shadow over their own. What began as a childhood friendship turned into something far darker. One fateful evening, the 3 friends gathered at a local spot they often frequented, Together Bar. It was a cozy, dimly lit place where people from all walks of life came to unwind. On this particular night, however, a storm was brewing beneath the surface. The air in the bar was thick with an unseen tension as they sat around a table, laughing and pretending everything was as it had always been. Paul, ever the optimist, raised his glass and joked with his 2 friends, completely unaware of the darkness creeping into their hearts. He excused himself to use the restroom, leaving his drink behind on the table, a simple, innocent gesture that would change his life forever. As soon as Paul disappeared around the corner, John's expression shifted. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small vial, his hand trembling slightly. He poured the contents, poison, into Paul's drink. Joseph sat still, his face pale, his silence a sign of complicity. The decision had been made. This would be the night Paul's success was cut short. "This will teach him," John muttered under his breath, his eyes glinting with jealousy. "He thinks he's better than us. It's our turn now." But little did they know someone was watching. Behind the bar stood Didi, a waitress who had worked at Together Bar for years. Didi had seen these 3 friends many times before. Paul had always been kind to her, often leaving generous tips and greeting her with a smile. John and Joseph, on the other hand, had always seemed colder, their interactions with Paul tinged with bitterness. Tonight, Didi had noticed the tension between them was unusually high. As she wiped down the counter, Didi's eyes caught the moment John slipped the poison into Paul's drink. Her heart raced, and she felt a chill run down her spine. The risks were clear. Paul's life was in danger. Without a second thought, Didi acted. She grabbed a clean glass and hurried toward the table just as Paul returned from the restroom, unaware of what had just happened. "Excuse me, sir," Didi said, her voice steady but urgent. "I'm sorry, but I think something's wrong with your drink. Let me get you a fresh one." Paul frowned, surprised, but something about the way Didi spoke made him trust her instinctively. He handed her the glass without question, watching as she quickly took it back to the bar. John and Joseph exchanged nervous glances but said nothing. They couldn't have known that Didi was already on the phone, her voice low as she called the police. She explained the situation in whispers, her hands shaking as she glanced at the table where the 2 friends sat, waiting for their plan to unfold. Minutes later, police officers walked into the bar, blending into the evening crowd. They moved with purpose, their eyes locked on John and Joseph. When they reached the table, John's face turned ghostly white. He tried to act calm, but it was too late. The vial of poison was still in his jacket pocket. There was no denying what they had done. Paul, sitting nearby, was in shock as he watched his two closest friends, his brothers in everything but blood, being arrested and led away. The betrayal hit him harder than anything he had ever experienced. These were the men he had trusted with his life, and they had tried to take it from him out of envy. "Why?" Paul whispered, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "We've been friends since we were kids. Why would you do this?" John couldn't meet his gaze. Joseph, with tears streaming down his face, spoke in a broken voice. "We were tired, Paul. Tired of living in your shadow. You had everything, the success, the deals, the admiration. And we felt like nothing." As the two were led out of Together Bar, Paul sat in silence, the weight of what had just happened crashing down on him. But through the haze of his shock and betrayal, one face stood out, Didi's. The woman who had saved his life with her quick thinking and courage. "You saved me," Paul said softly as he approached her. His gratitude was clear in his voice. "I don't know how to thank you." Didi smiled gently, her eyes calm but knowing. "You don't need to thank me. Just remember, not everyone who smiles at you is a friend. Sometimes jealousy can turn even the closest of friends into enemies." Paul nodded, her words sinking deep into his heart. From that day on, his life changed. He became more cautious and more aware of the people he surrounded himself with. But he never forgot the bravery of the woman who had saved him from the clutches of envy. Jealousy is a dangerous emotion. It starts small, a flicker of envy in the heart, but left unchecked, it can grow into something far darker. John and Joseph learned this the hard way, losing not only their freedom but also a friend who had always cared for them. Months passed, and Paul's life slowly returned to normal. But something inside him had shifted. He couldn't shake the thought of Didi and how her small act of kindness had saved him from certain death. He returned to Together Bar, not for the drinks or the company, but to speak with Didi. One evening, as the bar was winding down and the patrons were leaving, Paul approached her at the counter. "Didi," he began, his tone serious but warm, "what you did for me that night, it was more than just saving my life. You saw something that no one else did, and you acted without hesitation. I run a company and we could use someone like you, someone with that kind of instinct and heart. Would you consider working for me?" Didi looked up surprised. "Me? Working for you?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "But I'm just a waitress." Paul shook his head. "You're more than that, Didi. You have sharp instincts and a good heart. That's something no job can teach. Please think about it." After a moment of hesitation, Didi agreed. She joined Paul's company, starting as his assistant, and over time, they became an inseparable team. They worked side by side, growing the business together, but something more began to bloom between them, something neither had expected. As months passed, their bond deepened into something far more profound than friendship. They spent long hours together, sharing not only their work but their dreams, hopes, and laughter. And soon, Paul realized that he had found something even more valuable than his business success. One evening, in a quiet restaurant surrounded by close friends, Paul stood up. The moment had arrived. He looked at Didi, her smile lighting up the room, and he knew what he had to do. "Didi," Paul said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "you came into my life most unexpectedly, and you saved me in more ways than one. I can't imagine a future without you. Will you marry me?" Kneeling down in front of Didi, Didi's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, her voice catching with emotion. "Yes," she whispered, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I will." And so, from a single act of courage on a fateful night at Together Bar, a love story blossomed. Paul had learned the harsh lesson that jealousy can destroy even the oldest of friendships, but he had also discovered that kindness, trust, and love are what truly make life meaningful. Over the following months, their bond deepened after his marriage proposal. They spent more time together outside of work. Long walks by the sea, quiet dinners, and shared conversations about their hopes and dreams. Paul had been cautious about opening his heart after his friend's betrayal, but everything felt different with Didi. Felt right. Paul, holding her hand, smiling, said to Didi, "You came into my life unexpectedly, but I can't imagine my world without you in it. You're not just the woman who saved my life. You've become the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with." And with that, a small act of kindness that had once saved a life turned into the beginning of a lifelong love. Sometimes life's greatest blessings come from the most unexpected places. Paul had learned to be cautious of those who envy your success, but he also learned that kindness, trust, and love are what truly make life worth living. Paul stood, pulling her into his arms as they both laughed through their tears, the weight of the moment sinking in. They had both been through so much, but in each other, they had found a love that was genuine. Sometimes life brings people together in the most unexpected ways. Didi and Paul's story was one of fate, courage, and love. A small act of kindness led to something far greater than either of them could have imagined. In the end, love, like trust, must be earned and nurtured. And for Paul and Didi, it was the beginning of a beautiful life together. It was Didi's heart, not her job as a waitress, that made all the difference. And together, they built a life full of love, trust, and redemption. Proof that even in the darkest moments, the light of true friendship and love can shine through. Sometimes life's twists bring us to unexpected places. Paul and Didi's story is a reminder that love and trust can grow from even the darkest moments. And in the end, it's the smallest acts of courage that make the biggest difference. One more thing. Never leave your glass unattended. In that simple moment of carelessness, life can change in a heartbeat. We live in a world where jealousy, greed, and even thoughtless mischief can turn something as innocent as a drink into a dangerous weapon. Leaving your drink unattended opens the door to harm, whether from those you trust or from strangers. Paul's friends had been close since childhood, but envy poisoned their hearts. One unattended glass nearly cost him his life. Always be cautious, because in that brief moment, danger can strike.